Cassava is one of Nigeria's major crops and has the potential of addressing the challenges of food security in the country. This is because the three components of the cassava plant, namely leaves, the stems, and roots, are valuable. They can either be used for food, as planting materials, or as raw materials for industries. This episode of Transforming Agriculture in Nigeria will focus on the efforts of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security and other stakeholders to boost cassava production and its value chain. Welcome to the program Transforming Agriculture in Nigeria, specifically designed to showcase the agricultural sector in Nigeria and the efforts of the ministry to exploit the potentials of cassava for growth and development. I am Gabriel Ojile, your regular anchor, urging you to stay tuned for the full program.
Every part of Nigeria has something to offer.
What's new in the agricultural sector? What activities have occupied the attention of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security and her partners? Stay tuned as we open the program with our news diary. Keep watching.
The federal government has launched a national potato strategy document to boost production, ensure food security, and improve the livelihoods of potato farmers. The policy document, which was officially launched in Jos, the Plateau State capital, on Thursday, 7 September 2023, will run from 2023 to 2028 and was developed by Green Innovation Center for the Agriculture and Food Sector and GIZ in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security as well as other stakeholders. Delivering the keynote address, the Permanent Secretary of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, Ernest Afolabi Umakihe, stated that the launch of the National Potato Strategy document couldn't have come at a better time than now, especially with the declaration by the federal government of the state of emergency on food security. Umakihe, who was represented by the Director of Federal Department of Agriculture, Abdullahi Garba Abubakar, added that the essence of the strategy is to ensure sustainable food and nutrition security with a view to catalyzing the rapid transformation of the Nigerian potato sector. He applauded development partners for their contribution to the development of the document. Also speaking at the occasion, the Governor of Plateau State, Caleb Mutfwang, who was represented by the Commissioner, Plateau State Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, Bugama Samson Ishaku, assured that the state government will support the implementation of the policy.
I want to assure you that we will study this document carefully and we will be in the forefront of implementing this strategy to achieve the federal ministry's objective.
The federal government has declared its interest in bringing down the cost of fertilizer in the country. The government stated this during a stakeholders meeting with Fertilizer Producers and Suppliers Association of Nigeria, FESAN, in Abuja. The meeting came on the heels of the donation to Nigeria of 33,000 metric tons of potash by Russia's Uralchem Group and UN partners. Minister of Agriculture, Senator Abubakar Kyari, and the Minister of State, Senator Aliu Sabi Abdullahi, were present at the meeting where it was disclosed that the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security will drive the blending and distribution process of the fertilizer. In a swift response to this development, committees were set up after the stakeholders meeting to oversee the task. Minister of Agriculture, Senator Abubakar Kyari, appreciated the donation, saying that the task of the committee is to ensure the product is received and put to good use so that the fertilizer situation in Nigeria will be enhanced.
You have all been invited to participate in the process required to realize this objective, and from all indications, while it is not a trivial responsibility by any means, I have no doubt that we have the right collection of people and organizations in this room to get the job done. So what, in my view, needs to be done now is to ascertain the availability of the corresponding raw materials that will be needed for the donated potash to produce NPK, the finished products. In doing this, we should also ascertain the cost implication of producing the finished products while working out the modalities to determine its distribution to support the critical economic interventions of the government.
Permanent Secretary Dr. Ernest Afolabi Omakihe, who was represented by the Director of Federal Department of Agriculture, gave a breakdown of the task ahead.
We intend to know, at least to get registration of the status of the blending plants we have, then the current production capacity, their installed capacity, the current stock of raw materials they have, then the type of blends the blending plant can handle, whether dry or wet, then the formulation, whether they need to add micronutrients or not, so that at the end of it all, we'll know exactly what quantity of the potash should go to each of the blending plants.
In other news, the Niger State Governor Mohamed Bago paid a courtesy visit to the Minister of State of Agriculture and Food Security, Senator Aliu Abdullahi Sabi, who is also from Niger State. The governor was accompanied by other senators, members of the House of Representatives and traditional rulers from Niger State. Speaking, the governor said the visit was to felicitate with the minister and pledge their support for the good of the nation and Niger State in particular.
There is need for us to change Niger State. That now you are in a very vintage position. Let us collaborate. Thank God we are coming from the same constituency, National Assembly. So we know a lot of workings in the National Assembly. Here with me we have 2 senators, 5 members of House of Representatives. With synergy, we can do a lot.
Responding, the minister appreciated them for the visit, promising that the ministry will take advantage of the agricultural potentials of Niger State when the need arises.
Our state is the #1 agricultural state in terms of land area and potentials. And, the second state following is Borno State. So I think between the 2 ministers in this sector, we can have a combined land area of 46 square kilometers. So that itself is massive. And I think the challenge we are given about food security by Mr. President is something that Niger State has a very, very strong role to play. And I know for a fact that, if Niger succeeds, then all other states that have the same potentials, particularly, in food security crops, will have very high chances of succeeding.
As part of his courtesy visit, Governor Mohamed Bago also called on the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Senator Abubakar Kyari, to congratulate him on his appointment as minister and pledge the support of Niger State to agricultural development and the attainment of food security in the country.
You are watching Transforming Agriculture in Nigeria, and we are looking at cassava and its value chain, as well as the efforts of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security to develop all aspects of the crop. In our next segment, key functionaries of the ministry will be talking about the potentials of cassava, the challenges of its production, and the success of the ministry in repositioning cassava farming and processing. Keep watching.
Cassava, also known as Manihot esculenta, is a calorie-rich vegetable that is very rich in carbohydrates and key vitamins and minerals. It is a woody shrub that is grown in tropical and subtropical areas of the world. As a staple crop, cassava is important for food security in the tropics, Nigeria in particular, while also meeting the economic needs of Nigerians. Major cassava producing states in Nigeria are Anambra, Benue, Kogi, Cross River, Ondo, Imo, Akwa Ibom, and Rivers State. It is one of the crops that is widely consumed and used for different purposes. At least 7 in every 10 Nigerians consume a product of cassava once in a day.
Cassava is a very important crop, particularly in Nigeria, because we are the largest producer of cassava in the world. We produce up to 61 million metric tons annually, and we are really promoting that particular crop because it has so many derivatives, and that is why it is a very important crop for us, and we want to maintain the lead as first position in the world.
Nigeria is the world's largest producer of cassava, with an estimated 61.121 million metric tons in 2021. An estimated 30 million farmers are involved in the cultivation of cassava in Nigeria. Although cassava farming has a very huge potential, it is not without some challenges.
The challenge of cassava production is that it is a yearly crop. When you start growing it from now, it can take up to 9 months before you can harvest. And sometimes it is a crop that you don't intercrop it with other things. It is only that one. And if you are not lucky to have the good yielding variety, you will just do it and it is going to give you, despite the hectare you have cultivated, it will give you small tonnage. So we are really looking at the different angles of it all. And again, some farmers want to invest into cassava production, but the funds are not there. But the ministry is doing its best to see how can we support those who want to go into cassava production. And that is exactly what I said. We normally give them cassava cuttings at gratis for them to take it up, plant it, and then we can also give them the good agronomic practices they can do so that they can get high yield from it.
A major objective of cassava value chain is to enhance increased production and utilization of the tubers and create sustainable demand for the industrial food sector as well as export sector for cassava products. The Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security is saddled with the responsibility and has a mandate that seeks to strengthen the production of cassava value chain.
Cassava development in the country started from, we call enclave production from agricultural seed councils. That was in the mid-70s, 72, 74, where they have projects from agricultural development. It is called Cassava Multiplication Project. It is called NSS to National Agriculture. That was where Cassava Multiplication Project started. From the Cassava Multiplication Project, that project through the World Bank was improved to National Agricultural Council, Agricultural Seed Council, included cassava and all other seed crops. By this, they continue for the improvement of cassava.
Evidence has shown that the ministry's investments and intervention has enhanced cassava production in Nigeria to meet the ever-rising demand for cassava roots. Highlights of the efforts and achievement of the ministry in this direction include
to have a good policy that will drive the production and the processing and the utilization of that crop in conjunction with all other ministry. That is an area. And along this way, ministry is also implementing certain activities with a view to promote the continued uses of this commodity. Such activities is that there are inputs which we agree that if farmers and other stakeholders in processing sectors uses, it will ease production and lead to more output.
The potential of providing a means of livelihood for millions across the country can only be increased with improved processing technologies.
We are producing 61 million metric tons currently, annually. But we want to surpass that because we know other countries are also gearing up to see if they can meet up with the first position. So we are not relenting. We are always increasing our production and productivity. And as I said, most of the ones we are producing end up in using gari, which we eventually use it for eba. But as I said, there are companies now coming in to see how they can change that narrative and go into starch production.
The fact remains that cassava production is largely done locally and manually. However, the ministry is stressing the need for value chain approach.
The good thing and the advantage of the value chain approach is that a farmer who is interested in producing cassava will look for the cuttings and he will plant it. By the time he plants it, he is done with his own. If he like, he can now harvest and sell it as it is. Somebody somewhere will come to say that I want to add value to cassava. Let me buy it raw as it is. Then he can now wash it, peel it, maybe grate it, and leave it at that stage. And that is the value chain approach we are talking about. Somebody will take it as a grated cassava, add value to it by frying, drying, whatever, so that he can also sell it as gari. Somebody will take it as grated, then make it starch out of it. So these are the value chains we are talking about.
However, cassava farmers have a role to play. If the impact of the ministry in boosting cassava farming, processing and marketing is to be felt.
We have what is called good agricultural practices. In these good agricultural practices, what it entails is that there are laid down production processes which started from good clearing and timely production. Everything is timed. For instance, there are some cassava commodity that use 90 days. We have some that is above 150 days. So, but those that use 90 days in production, what is essential is that when you are to follow good agricultural practices, you will know the time for planting, the time for harrowing, the time for harvesting. Everything is time and its range. And it falls between the rainfall, the time that rainfall starts, and you relate it with the time that rainfall will end. If all this agricultural, then it involves the times of harvesting, the times of using fertilizer. All this time followed appropriate timing.
The program is transforming agriculture in Nigeria, and we are looking at cassava and its value chain in Nigeria, as well as the collaborations between the ministry and research institutes to develop the cassava value chain. In furtherance of this, we have been talking to researchers and scientists at the Nyanya Abuja outstation of the National Root Crop Research Institute, which has its headquarters in Umudike. The discussions took us through the mandate of the institute on root crops generally and cassava in particular, touching on value chain and the breakthroughs on research findings, among others. Let us see what we have.
The National Root Crops Research Institute outstation, located in Nyanya, Nasarawa State, is one of the agencies of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. The institute is an outstation of the Mother Research Institute in Umudike and pursues the same mandate to research roots and tuber crops production.
It carries out the mandate of the institute, which is to conduct research into genetic improvement, production, storage, utilization, and then socioeconomics of root and tuber crops of economic importance, which include cassava, yam, potato, sweet potato, ginger, turmeric, and others.
Continuous effort by the Institute and the Federal Ministry has yielded some breakthroughs and also increased cassava value chain activities on cassava production.
Cassava can be used for a whole lot of things. We have cassava chin-chin, cassava bread, we have the cassava high-quality cassava flour, and a lot we have done that, using our value addition. We call it PDP, Product Development Project, or program in the Institute, and that program is dedicated to value addition. And if you have been able to see what we've been able to display in our some of the programs that we're into, you see that cassava can be processed and used into more than 20 food products that are very, very important in the food system and then for food security. So the Institute has done a lot.
Similarly, the result of researches carried by the Institute has not only boosted Nigeria's economy, but also positively affected livelihoods of cassava farmers.
If you look back to some years back, you will discover that the yield of cassava has been very low. But now we've been able to achieve as much as 45 tons per hectare in cassava. And we have also, like I said before, we have been able to make these farmers understand that they need improved seeds, certified improved seed. When I say certified, which means that the planting material must be of high quality, it must be disease-free. And these farmers will plant it and they'll get a value for their money. You can now see farms in the country, farmers that are having 40-45 tons yield of cassava.
Through the support and partnership between the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, the Institute continues to record successes.
They are the supervising ministry, and then we partner with them in terms of training and all value addition and then development of even some technologies that has to do with some breeding programs, varietal developments, and all that.
The program is still transforming agriculture in Nigeria. Our crew made efforts to speak with cassava farmers and processors, particularly those of them that have benefited from the partnership between the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security and the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. Let us hear from them in our next segment, Farmers Speak.
Training upon training. We started from Umudike Research Institute. We were trained as cassava entrepreneur. When we came back from Umudike, we were empowered, we were given seeds. So that was last year, late planting season last year. So what they gave us was to plant based on 1 hectare of land. We cleared, follow all the farm system we were taught from Umudike. So early this year, exactly what they told us happened. They said our harvest will be more faster than the way it was in those days.
We went for a recipe program, which we changed. I now learned how to do gari there. Coming back, I said, let me start up something so that we will help ourselves and the cassava that we left on farm that is rotting. So that is how we start from a small scale. Now we produce in a little bit large scale. Right now, every day in this place, we process 2 tons of cassava.
The future looks bright for cassava farming in Nigeria. The Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security is doing all it can to ensure that where this popular staple is concerned, Nigerians need not to worry about availability, variety, and affordability to the extent that wealth is created for both farmers, processors, and the country. And all things being equal, that goal is achievable. Keep a date with us, same time, same station next week for another interesting package. I'm your guide, Gabriel Ojile. Good night.